Good afternoon. Welcome to the new session titled As Food as It Gets. Before presenting you our guests, let me share with you some figures. Each year, 1/3 of the global production of foodstuff is lost, and respectively in Greece, 5.1% of the production of fruit is wasted. More than 56 kilos of food wasted per year. We are in the 4th place, ranking worse in the European Union. Dealing with this food waste must be dealt with a dynamic and coordinated action. For this reason, I would like to present you our 3 guests. Mr. Manolis Grafakos, Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Energy, Mr. Alexander Theodoridis, who is the co-founder, and he wants to be called the Chief Food Saving Warrior, and Mr. Achilleas Plitharas, Footprint Leader of WWF. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Food waste and its reduction has been legislated upon both in Greece and European Union. Beyond the goals that have said, what does it mean for you, this new effort? Let us start with the ministry. Let me thank you, first of all, for the invitation and congratulate you on the subject that you have included in this conference. And beyond those figures, let me give you a couple of more. Our country ranks second in landfills, in food landfills. Therefore, all that waste lands in such landfills. And the second is that in relation with the GDP, the waste production per capita is 50% higher than the EU average. And that mostly is to be accounted to food. So what we have at hand? A huge challenge, which is multifaceted in the way it can be dealt. The first is institutional framework, which indeed was lacking, but we adopted new laws. 2 daring moves were made that I believe will reduce the food waste. One is imposing a fee, a landfill fee. So from the beginning of 2022, 20 euros will be imposed per each ton of food, of organic waste, that has to conclude in landfill. And the second, equally important, is the implementation of I pay as much as I discard. We must realize that our waste will be charged in our house, in our building, in relation to their production. So we have adopted such laws. The great challenge is this goal setting to lead to a change of habits, of many, many years. We have to have in mind that there is no need to have so much stuff on our table when we know that we will not consume it. I believe that the friends in this panel are intensively active in this field, and I believe that both these agencies that they represent will help in changing the lifestyle of consumers. Nice. Mr. Theodoridis, Chief Warrior, as an NGO that you have established in order to fight food waste, what do you consider should be the next step? First of all, we also thank you for the invitation, and we are glad that you demonstrate this issue, because some years ago we were standing and we were stranded all alone. We are also extremely glad for the laws adopted. As you know, we have greatly contributed to that. For us, this is an excellent start. Let us not forget where we started from, the fact that this is a beginning. This is an excellent beginning. It should have been far more daring. Some things which were very important for us could have been solved easily. Unfortunately, they were not voted, and I know Mr. Grafakos wanted them. Therefore, streamlining VAT for companies that are donors, such as Alpha Vita Vasilopoulos, the supermarkets group, for instance. Unfortunately, this is not implemented. Therefore, many donor companies do pay that VAT and opt for paying this VAT instead of having problems. We could also have a registry of sponsors, of donators, where the state could do the audit and do the check and see who would be receiving. So a company might claim that I give that food there, it's absolutely legal, so I should be tax exempted or VAT exempted. Anyway, a lot more could be done, but anyway, it's a beginning. We were a little bit late, but better late than never. We're optimistic by default, and therefore we believe that this is a good basis in order to further develop the issue and move towards the right direction. And Mr. Plitharas, as a representative of WWF, a most active member of civic society, what does that entail for you? Well, legislation is a very good branch, as Alexander has said, could have been far more austere. That is to have this I pay as I throw away, as I discard, could have started far earlier. But anyway, once we started, we must build the appropriate and very strong foundation. So I will revert the rationale and let us take us back to the first steps. What must we attain for all people to understand, all companies understand, but also public administration, that food waste is a huge social and environmental problem. Let us start from the basics. It is to the interest of all to mitigate, to reduce waste, either because it will have an impact on their finances or because it will create better social conditions for better access for vulnerable social groups, but also environmentally it will be beneficial because on a global scale, 1/3 of the food is discarded, 40% according to a WWF research. But at the same time, that means at the same time we waste a huge quantity of natural resources that was invested. 70% of the water is irrigation water for the production of food. 80% of CO2 emissions could have been avoided. And 70% of the losses of the land biodiversity is to be accounted to the continuous extension of the global nutrition chain. All that must come into proportion, and everyone should operate on the basis of their one's own responsibility. We must become more sensitive as citizens and assume our personal obligation, whether it's the greatest portion of the consumption, because we must be clear, more than 50% of that waste is done in the households, but also big corporations want to be CSR leaders, and they are sensitive to that, but also the public administration must set goals and also introduce KPIs. That is, if I do well, what more can be done, and so forth, so as to see whether we can reach this 2030 goal, reduction by 30%. So we see that for the time being, the effort focuses on paying fines and measuring. Now, as a ministry, how will you sensitize citizens on food waste? Well, the issue is not independent to the overall change of lifestyle and habits, of how we handle and manage waste in each household. So if someone realizes that the rationale is to avoid producing the piece of waste, including food, that will enter other dimensions. If one realizes that the next step of prevention is the reuse of a product, you realize that this is a horizontal issue and most critical. And here lies the challenge to create the appropriate infrastructure. Is that obvious? We can't do away with everything. There will be waste, but there have to be make a triage on the spot and have the various have plastic, for instance, biodegradable plastic that must be managed accordingly. So the goal is to create the infrastructure with cooperation with the local authority to be collected separately after having an original triage in the household, and then for them to be led to places where, following the appropriate processing, they will be reused. And therefore we'll have compost and geothermy and so forth. At the point, currently in the country we have a colossal program of tendering for waste management and biodegradable waste management. The national planning that has been approved by the National Council a year ago envisages the creation of 40 plants for waste management and another 40 plants for biodegradable plants, so as to create the appropriate infrastructure, not to discard all that. So this is the overall plan. Having completed with the institutional framework the integration of the EU directives, what you said, Mr. Plitharas, with the goal setting, that therefore everything will be measurable and there will be indicators. And when we reach this reduction by 30% until 2030, we'll know how we're doing. And then we'll have a broad campaign of the change of habits and lifestyle. So, how does an NGO can help in this field of drawing sensitivity? Mr. Plitharas. Well, I'll say again, let us move a step back, take one step back, because as Mr. Grafakos very appositely said, we must have infrastructure as a state. The point is for food not to be considered waste, because then we can't do much. It will be either fodder or composted, or will end in a landfill. So let us move a step back. How can be that? This cannot be done by the central government, of course. There are other levels of administration, such as local administration, that has a huge role to play. And there are all of us, the other stakeholders, organizations, companies, that must come under a common umbrella of a common goal. Otherwise, we will not succeed, because for each message we emit, pay heed to waste, there are hundreds of other messages that demonstrate I create waste, therefore I exist. Well, being the organization per excellence that we have run every kind of videos, presentations, information campaign. Yes, this is the issue, drawing awareness, raising awareness. The point is that we are a very small organization. Even WWF, which is a big organization, is too small for what has to be done. There are many examples in other EU countries. We have the honor to be in the experts platform since 2016. And we remember saying at the time that is the 30% goal by 2030. And I was saying, we don't know. In Greece, we don't know what this is all about. That is, we don't know the whole quantity. Dropping waste creation by 30%, what is the 100%? We don't know what that is. So this is what we start. First of all, introducing a common measuring methodology, something that should have already been effected. So for companies who are willing to do their duty, to know what to do, this is very important. And now something else, I'll give you an example. As you know, along with the Alpha Vita Vassilopoulos, we launched the coalition against food waste. We couldn't proceed because there was no financing. The Netherlands earmarked 7.5 million euros for what we do alone, and we run around like rats. We don't have the illusion that we can change everything. We have specific limits. This is where the state must understand that they can steer the big ship to another direction. Well, I think that we could spend the whole day discussing this issue. Unfortunately, we're running after time. I'd like to warmly thank you, and let us proceed the discussion outside. Thank you.